This video is sponsored by Brilliant. Hey, Marcus House with you here, and today we are talking about how Starship's low-cost vision to send mass into orbit will change the lives for everyone, at least to some degree. How are SpaceX intending to lower that cost, and why does it matter? Well, recent funding news for SpaceX provides incredibly beneficial resources to start the engineering involved in this huge part of the technology. That's right, the systems needed to refill Starship with fuel and oxygen while in orbit. We also can't forget the amazing work on the complex engine that drives this beast. Starship will change everything.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
At SpaceX's Boca Chica facility, we are witnessing the largest, most powerful and most ambitious rocket ever to be built. SpaceX's Starship vehicle is coming to life at an extremely rapid pace, and we have the privilege to watch this right before our eyes. Starship is an extremely difficult challenge when it comes to aerospace engineering. It is designed to be a rapidly reusable, super heavy lift vehicle capable of taking around 150 metric tons to low Earth orbit. Now that's a larger payload than the Saturn V, while all being fully reusable. Starship is also the first vehicle that is actually being designed and built with the goal to take human beings to Mars and then bring them back again. This is the biggest single challenge of colonizing another world, the transportation system. There is of course all sorts of other systems that are going to be needed as well, but the focus of SpaceX is simple: get as much mass to Mars as possible for the lowest cost possible. This is a grand plan with a large number of steps. Today we are talking a little more in depth about just one of those steps, refilling. In order to achieve the goal of truly making human life sustainable on multiple planets, and with that first step being the Moon and Mars, we first need to be able to get a fully reusable spacecraft with payload to orbit and then refill it with fuel and oxidizer. Why do we need to do this? Because with a reusable rocket, it takes almost all the fuel in the booster and the ship just to put something into orbit. And that is the point. There is barely any propellant left. There is just enough for the Starship to deorbit, aerobrake through the atmosphere using the skydiver or the belly flop maneuver, and land. That aerobraking maneuver will allow the Starship to reduce almost all orbital velocity off, with the ship needing just a small amount of fuel to flip over and touch down on the landing pad right there at the very end of the journey. So this is a wonderful thing in its own right. We could send mass to orbit cheaply with this design alone, but low Earth orbit is only the very first step. Pushing on further to Mars needs a Mars transfer trajectory as well as propellant for landing. That is a minimum of around 4.8 to 5 kilometers per second of added velocity, assuming that Starship can indeed aerobrake without using any propellant at Mars. There is absolutely no way Starship will ever be able to do this unless it is refilled in orbit. What makes this process even more difficult is that reusability incurs quite a payload penalty. We need aerosurface controls, we need heat shields, batteries, landing propellant, grid fins and landing legs, which subtracts the amount of mass that can be placed in orbit on any one launch. Due to this, a big chunk is taken out of the rocket's potential capabilities. Therefore, an extremely robust and reliable method of orbital refilling is essential to the success of Starship, perhaps more so than any other single aspect of this launch vehicle. The Super Heavy booster vehicle itself must also sacrifice performance, as it needs to retain some amount of propellant for its boost back and landing burns. For the booster, just 1 kilogram of orbital payload is lost for every 5 to 10 kilograms of extra hardware such as legs and grid fins that are added to the booster. Things, however, are far more consequential when discussing the reusability of the second Starship stage. Every single kilogram of hardware and propellant mass for Starship recovery and reuse will result in a 1-to-1 reduction in payload capacity. This adds up very quickly, as between 100 to 130 metric tons could be tied up in the dry mass of the vehicle, including the components needed to reuse each Starship vehicle. We plan to talk more about that alone in a future video. If you're interested in these more dedicated style videos, let me know in the comments. A big thank you for engaging with these videos and subscribing. That helps us to know which topics we should dive deeper into. So yes, we have a conundrum here that is faced by SpaceX. To make spaceflight truly cheap and reusable, the ability to refill is a necessity. Now, given that the payload capability to low Earth orbit for Starship is around 100 to 150 tons, and a Starship will hold roughly 1,200 metric tons of fuel, a single tanker launch carrying that propellant to refill a Starship can only fill a small percentage of an empty Starship in orbit. If we assumed a propellant payload capacity of 100 metric tons as an example, it would take around 10 dedicated tanker launches to completely refill it. Now, there are still a lot of unknowns about Starship's dry mass and the vacuum Raptor engine's specific impulse, so it is hard to say exactly how much fuel is needed to meet the requirements to land on Mars. One thing's for sure though, there will be many tanker launches needed to refill in low Earth orbit. If this does indeed become the norm, Starship can be extremely reusable while still offering performance that even a similarly sized expendable rocket couldn't even begin to compete with. Although the theory behind SpaceX's strategy is undeniably sound, the fact remains that orbital refilling has never been tested anywhere even close to the scale, speed or reliability that Starship will need for numerous in-orbit refillings. Assuming SpaceX uses every ounce of Starship and Super Heavy's performance for each tanker launch to low Earth orbit, Starship will have to be able to repeatedly and rapidly transfer its maximum payload capacity worth of fuel from one tanker ship into the Starship heading to the Moon or Mars. Now, if we assumed that maximum to be 150 metric tons or 330,000 pounds of liquid oxygen and methane, all of that mass needs to be transferred in microgravity conditions. The great news for SpaceX is that they have recently been awarded funding by NASA to help make orbital refilling a reality. On September 27, 2019, NASA announced a new round of funding worth a total of $43.2 million that was to be dispersed among 14 separate companies, all focused on advancing important technologies necessary for sustained exploration of the Moon and Mars. SpaceX received $3 million there to work with NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center to build and test cryogenic fluid couplers. These are the type of nozzle that Starship will need to refuel in orbit. Even more exciting though was on October 14th this year, when it was announced that SpaceX's Starship program won $53 million from NASA to perform a full-scale test of orbital propellant transfer. This takes SpaceX's NASA relationship involving such crucial technology to the next level. The year's investments focused on three main categories: cryogenic fluid management, lunar surface, and closed-loop descent and landing capability demonstrations. How the design of those refilling mechanisms begin to surface remains, of course, to be seen. Previous thoughts and ideas from SpaceX animations have changed over time. Back in the days of the interplanetary transport system, the idea was that two ships would dock side by side for refilling. Soon after that, all changed to what we see currently, which is that reverse tail-to-tail refilling design. We can only assume at this point that this is still the current line of thinking, but who knows what may evolve with this round of funding. That will be exciting to see. Now, along with the technology to refill, SpaceX needs to employ an abundance of new technologies in parallel. The entire launch architecture needs to be at a point where a mission to low Earth orbit and back is first possible and reliable with full reusability. The heat shield tiles appear to be in constant experimentation currently, so any problems here need to be solved. Other core requirements, of course, SpaceX are already making very good progress on. We've seen over the last few years the incredible pace of development with the creation of the Raptor engine. This engine is designed to run with fuel that can be created here on Earth and on Mars. As we showed the other week, Corey here created quite the incredible video of SpaceX's Raptor engine in action, which really gives you a good idea why this is so groundbreaking. We can even see inside the 3D engine here just to see the inner workings of this incredible piece of engineering. The liquid methane, which is also used to cool the engine bell, flows into the preburner and is ignited with smaller amounts of liquid oxygen. The liquid oxygen preburner does the reverse, and with both preburners active and driving the turbo pumps, methane-rich and oxygen-rich gases are forced together into the combustion chamber. This flight-proven full flow stage combustion cycle engine is a critical step to the master plan, and each and every Raptor iteration we see emerge is better than the last. But why is this Methalox fuel mixture so important to Starship's reusability and success compared to, say, liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen? A few benefits that we will likely dive into in another video is that passive cooling is all that is needed to keep liquid methane cryogenic. Liquid hydrogen is comparatively much more difficult, with it needing a lot more active cooling. Even then, it still has a habit of venting over time, so liquid methane instantly wins out when it needs to be useful for long mission durations. The other big problem is that liquid hydrogen is a lot more bulky than methane. meaning that the size of the Starship would need to be considerably greater just to store the fuel. The main reason, of course, is that liquid methane and oxygen can be created on Mars. Doing this requires the Sabatier process. Now, surveys and spectral findings already obtained indicate that the carbon dioxide required for that reaction is abundant in Mars's atmosphere. Now, we get a lot of comments skeptical about this due to the atmospheric pressure on Mars being very low, less than 1/100th of what we have here on Earth. The thing is that Mars's atmosphere is made up of almost 95% carbon dioxide, so despite that thin atmosphere, there is around 20 times the concentration of CO2, so carbon dioxide is certainly not a problem. The Sabatier process also needs a source of free hydrogen to react with the carbon dioxide to produce methane. If propellant plants on Mars are set up in areas with abundant quantities of ice, that water can be split to create the hydrogen needed to create the liquid methane at the same time as producing the liquid oxygen. A lot of research is still ongoing, but it seems very possible to generate the propellant needed to launch a Starship off Mars. With all these technologies working together, things are looking very positive. We have the propulsion systems with Raptor heading in the right direction. We have the correct architecture for the fuel mixture that will be supported here on Earth and on Mars. We have orbital refilling prototyping that will begin as soon as we can fly these prototypes to orbit and return. If SpaceX and NASA can successfully develop a method of orbital refilling, the way we live will be changed forever, not only on Earth but also on Mars. The Starship will one day allow people to migrate to Mars, with Elon Musk estimating ticket costs of around $200,000 per person. That's less than the average home price. How crazy is that? SpaceX will also be able to achieve these exponentially cheap prices, as each flight will cost only a mere $2 to $10 million. This truly shows that by developing a 100% reusable spacecraft, the sci-fi dreams of travelling to the Red Planet is becoming a reality, even for middle-class people. But we made a bold claim that suggested that this technology will change life as we know it for everyone, not just the very tiny percentage of us humans willing to shoot off to Mars. So how will life be changed for everyone? Just as a few examples, we can look at the upcoming funding model that will help drive this passion for space exploration, that being Starlink. This aims to provide cost-effective internet to the populated world. That alone provides the ability for all of us to have better choices when it comes to connectivity. The potential funding this project could bring in is astronomical for SpaceX. That will help to more rapidly develop the Starship transportation infrastructure required. Now, we talk about that more in this video here if you want to dive deeper into that, but summarising it, that project will drastically improve the options for the entire world. Now, there are other spin-off industries that will come from low-cost mass to orbit, including things like asteroid mining, a potentially lucrative field. Now, most people are not interested in travelling to Mars, but there is another great option, space tourism. That is a huge upcoming industry as well. I mean, just a tourist flight into low Earth orbit would be amazing. That is the experience of a lifetime. As has always been the case, technology that is created for space benefits humans here on Earth. Multiplying the efforts in space-related industries gives us all better technology. This has given us inventions like we now use every day. Micro devices and tech such as mobile cameras, purification systems, thermal materials, research in solar panels and batteries. Just think of what technology could exist by simply investing heavily into extracting fuel from the atmosphere. Perhaps that can go hand in hand to help with climate control in the future. Who knows? The possibilities are quite literally endless. So the first flights of the Starship are expected to be around 2021. Uncrewed missions to Mars are expected potentially around 2022, with crewed missions to Mars around 2024. Saying that, of course, Elon Musk has set unrealistic deadlines in the past. The rate of development with the rocket system right now is proving to be quite rapid regardless. We have seen multiple test tanks and prototypes, 3 of which have flown. We also right now have SN8 on the pad, where it should break free from the ground and reach for the sky in the coming weeks. So yes, it has been inspiring to watch SpaceX iterate for the past year, and I can't wait until we reach the next phase of testing where we'll see 2 Starships in orbit for SpaceX's first refilling test. What a crazy test that will be. We still have a ways to go before seeing that. However, one day these Starship vehicles will take the first humans to Mars, changing human life as we know it. Now, a huge thank you to my sponsor Brilliant here for supporting today's video. I simply could not be here where I am today making this weekly content without the continued support. It has certainly helped us improve the channel a great deal over the last year. Now, we talk a lot about Brilliant, but there are a lot of angles that we haven't referenced, such as the fundamental impact of materials with teachers and students. Scroll through support threads and you soon find a mountain of discussions from teachers telling the world how they use Brilliant not just for their own continued learning, but to also then relay and challenge their students to think about these topics in a different way. Their problem-based courses really are an excellent way to build understanding. Stories like this illustrate why we love Brilliant too. This form of content can provide a new way for students that may have disliked mathematics and science subjects in the past to see things from a totally new perspective. We hear examples of students that come in disliking a topic and then end up here solving problems and having fun. The content is continually getting refreshed too. Take this newly revamped Geometry Fundamentals course. This, just as one example, is a terrific starter course that's perfect if you're just starting your exploration of the topic. If you are naturally curious and you want to build up those problem-solving skills, then consider checking out Brilliant. At the same time, you can support me here by heading to brilliant.org/MarcusHouse. That will give the first 200 people 20% off for the first year of Brilliant Premium. You'll find that link, of course, in the description below. Thank you as well, of course, to my amazing patrons. There is just no way that we can continue creating this content at this frequency and length without you all. The support that you all here provide helps us to increase the time that we can spend, and that is all thanks to the huge list of growing names that we can see right there. Thank you, each and every one of you. As that list continues to grow, we can do plenty more. So if you like what we're doing and you'd like to join our awesome patrons, head here to patreon.com/MarcusHouse. That gives you access to interact with me more directly via the linked roles on our Discord server. You can have earlier access to videos to watch before anyone else. And you can also have your name listed right there like all of the other incredible people. A massive thank you as well, of course, to Brendan, Brenton and Adam for helping me out with these videos, and also for the full quality control squad there helping me proof the material for these videos. If you're interested as well in these topics and you'd like to be a part of it, follow me on Twitter and please do get in touch. In the tile in the bottom left today, we have my video from weeks ago talking about SpaceX's amazing year with the Starlink network. In the top right is my latest video, and in the bottom right, content that YouTube has selected from my channel just for you. Thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you all in the next video.